Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah, or you might also know me as the Fluffy Curvy Princess. It's been a while since I've been on this channel, things have been a bit busy, but today we are back, and I'd like to take some time to talk about some dark academia books I read. Before we begin, you might want a better understanding of what dark academia is. Dark academia, when it comes to the literature, has to do with a book that is set in an academic setting and then deconstructs, usually in a dark manner such as through crime or murder, the consequences of academic thought. This can be to show the pros and cons within academia, as well as to show how the extremism of certain academic thoughts can be destructive. If you don't understand, I think that it might become more clear as I talk about the books that we're going to be discussing today. All of my books today will be rated both by leaves and stars. Leaves will be the dark academia vibes they gave off, and stars will be how good I thought the book was. Our first book today is the classic The Picture of Dorian Gray. I've only heard good things about this book, and I see why. Every person I've heard who's read this book was like, this is one of the best books I ever read. There have been pretty much no complaints. So I want to let you know, I did add this book to my best books to ever grace us list on Goodreads, and I stand by that decision. It is a brilliant commentary on vanity, what the meaning of art is, and on the difference between reality and sensation. What is the meaning of life? If you could do whatever you wanted to do, and there were no physical consequences, what would you do? If you could do whatever you wanted without any physical consequences to your body, would you? And I think that in some ways we live in a society where we can already do that with how advanced medicine is, but let's take this to the most extreme. You can party and drink and take any substance you want. It never affects your body like in a negative way. You can be with as many people as you want and as irresponsible as you want and never have to suffer your body breaking down because of diseases. You can be as violent as you want and again never have to suffer your body breaking down from getting in fights. What would you do? We like to say, I think, that we'd never do those things. But even if there are no consequences to your body, what about your mind and your spirit? What about social repercussions? Because in the world, there's not just you. Even if you don't suffer physically from these things, or in your mind you're not suffering mentally, other people are suffering and will view you a certain way. When does a person go so far that they don't want to be redeemed? I thought this was the perfect character study of the descent of a human soul from purity into foulness. And as I said earlier, there's also a lot of critique on what is art. When does art move from being an expression of the human soul and from learning to just pure decadence and an excuse to participate in our basest desires with little thought or regard for the human spirit put behind it? I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars and 5 out of 5 leaves. The Dark Academia fall vibes were excellent. Our next book is Ace of Spades by Faridah Àbíké-íyímídé. If I pronounced that wrong, please forgive me. I did try to do some research into how to properly pronounce it. This dark academia book takes place at Nevis Academy, and it follows Devin Richards, a poor scholarship student, and Chiamaka Adebayo, an upper middle class girl of Italian and Nigerian descent. The two can be more different, and the only similarity they seem to share in this book at first is that they're both black students. They don't really care to have anything to do with each other. And in fact, Devin has a pretty negative view of Chiamaka, viewing her as stuck up, until a mysterious person calling themselves Aces starts ruining their lives. They dumped rumors around the school about them, rumors that may be more than just rumors for some of them. This mysterious Aces seems to be bent on tormenting them out of the school, and the two of them need to put aside their differences and team up to take on this maniac before someone really gets hurt. Okay, so there was stuff in this book that I loved. And then there was stuff in this book that I thought was really sloppy. I love the characters. I love the pacing. I was on edge for a lot of this book, dying to know who Aces was, what his goal would be, and how they're going to stop him. And even after it was revealed who was behind everything, it was still interesting to find out how they were going to stop them. And in fact, I probably haven't been so on the edge of my seat with a young adult since A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. As for the dark academia part of the book, it deals with systemic racism, and I do feel like this is a valid issue. And I wish, though, that the book had explored it more. I feel like racism in academia could be explored personally in a more complex way than the book presented it. The issue of systematic racism in this book, in my opinion, is really oversimplified. And because of that, so are the antagonists. One could excuse it by being like, well, it's just a young adult book. But I feel like that's not a good excuse to have more complex villains. Plenty of young adult books do that. Now, I'm going to have a spoiler alert here, so if you want to miss this part, please skip to this time. Starting now, but Belle was the best villain in the series. It was a great reveal. She had the most complex feelings out of all the antagonists, and I actually wish they had explored that more. Other characters, though, were just made to be hateful. And not that I think people need a reason to be hateful, necessarily, but, like, the way it's done, one person who was super helpful to one of the black students for many years just suddenly turns to them and is like, yeah, I'm ruining your life. And they're like, why? And all he said was, because I can. Really? Really? I understand some racists are sociopaths, but I doubt even most of them would say something that stupid and senseless out loud. And almost all of these villains are along that kind of, well, just because I can mindset. Racism, I feel like, has to be taught in some ways. And usually, no matter how shoddy and bad they are, excuses of some kind are given. Racism also comes in tiers. Some people are clearly racist and hate everybody who's different than them, while others are ignorant or are subconsciously racist because of how they were raised culturally. But in this book, almost everyone just totally hates anyone who isn't white. And I think the idea that the antagonist and what they ended up being was good, but I would have loved more nuance. I just feel like making them all hate to hate and nothing more than that is really lazy, especially given that most of these students pretended to be friends with them and to be good teachers for years. And while I think the idea of tackling systemic racism is good, systemic racism isn't usually super direct like that, I feel like it's more indirect. The racism I've witnessed is often the rude joke or comment before someone quickly turning to you and be like, well, I meant other people, not you. It's the things that are said behind your back. The school setup that inadvertently or quite purposefully allows for discrimination. While these scenes were briefly brushed over, they were neglected for a more overt villain who's just like, I'm a racist. And I just wish it could have been explored more in depth. For the stars, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, and I feel like that's where I would leave the leaves as well. Because as I said, I just wish there had been a more nuanced explanation of systematic racism in academia. Last but not least, we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. And this book totally destroyed me. Never Let Me Go is one of those books where people say that the less you know about it, the better, and I would agree with that. So I'm not really going to give away much of the plot at all. I will say that I was emotionally destroyed, and while I didn't cry when I finished the book, I just remember lying in bed and feeling this deep emptiness and sadness, which is somehow sometimes worse than just crying about something. But I'm afraid the dark academia aspect that I was promised was abysmal. I would not consider this a dark academia book. Even though the first portion of this book does take place in an academic setting, and there is intellectual reflection, the reflection is in no way critiquing the mind or academia. Rather, the focus of the story is on what does it mean to be human, and does some character study alongside that as well. It is speculative fiction. Some people say science fiction even. In no way, though, would I consider this to be a dark academia book, though. So I feel like I was kind of lied to in some of those lists. I do recommend it, though. As a book, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but as a dark academia, 1 out of 5 fall leaves, because it's not dark academia. So that's all I was able to read for dark academia in the last few months, so I have been reading some other things. Sorry I've been gone for so long, just certain things in my life have kept me really busy, but I'd like to plan to get back to uploading more again. As always, I appreciate you checking out my channel. If there's any dark academia books that you like and would like to recommend that I check out, please do. I really do enjoy the critique of the academic system and the pros and cons that it offers. So, have a great rest of your day. Bye.